Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to this evening's council meeting. My name is Councillor Patricia McAllister and I am the Lord Mayor of Westminster. Before we begin, I would like to sadly announce the passing of two former councillors over the past weeks. Honorary Alderman Anne Mallinson, OBE, sadly passed away over the Christmas period. Anne was elected as a councillor for Hyde Park Ward in 1974 and served the area for 32 years, including being Lord Mayor from 1986 to 1987. In 2001, she was awarded an OBE for services to the local community. Anne cared passionately about her local area and served with dedication and distinction. She was particularly kind to new councillors and would gently help them to understand their new roles. Anne was an active member of the London Mayors Association and was also a JP. She was actively involved in older people's issues and was a great supporter of Beecham Lodge, as well as being heavily involved in the past Overseers Society. She was appointed an honorary alderman on her retirement from the council in 2006. I was also sadly advised that former councillor Jerry Bramall passed away last week at the grand old age of 103. Jerry was a councillor for Churchill Ward from 1964 to 1968, and before that she was a councillor on the former Westminster City Council for Alderney Ward from 1959 to 1964. Her husband was Sir Ashley Bramall, former leader of the ILEA. Please now stand and join me in a minute's silence to remember both former councillors. Please be seated. Thank you all. I would like to remind all members that we are live streaming this meeting and therefore microphones will be active when members are speaking and the cameras will be broadcasting until the meeting closes. A list of all the members who are present will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. As this will be a busy meeting, I would like to remind members to be as succinct as possible in their speeches and questions so that we can cover all the business we need to. Appointment of Relief Chair. As I may need to vacate the chair during the meeting, I propose that Councillor Consia Albert be chosen to take the chair as necessary. May I please have a seconder for my motion? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ormsby has seconded my motion that Councillor Albert chairs the meeting as necessary. Unless any member objects, the motion will be deemed to be agreed. If anybody has an objection, please say so now. Thank you, Councillor Albert. Please join me on the dais. Agenda item 2, minutes from previous meeting. Unless any member wishes to raise a point of order relating to the accuracy of the minutes, I will consider that members are content that I sign the minutes of the last meeting. Please state now if you wish to raise a point of order. Thank you. Agenda item 3, Lord Mayor's communications. These are set out on the agenda. Agenda item 4, declarations of interests. It is necessary to declare any interest in relation to the issues on which there will be a vote. These items were set out in the list of speakers on the order paper. Members need to declare an interest in the items selected for debate if they are speaking in that debate. All members in attendance were asked to identify in advance of the meeting if they have an interest to declare. If anyone has any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interest to declare, please do so now. Thank you. Agenda item 5. There is no statement of urgent matters. Agenda item 6. All councillors were asked to notify in advance of the meeting if they have a petition that they wish to present. I am not aware of any petitions. However, if anyone has a petition they would like to present, please mention this now. Thank you. Agenda item 7, public participation. Each member of the public selected for this item and here this evening has submitted a question which they will present to the relevant Cabinet member. They will have up to 2 minutes to present their question. Then the relevant Cabinet member will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Can I ask that when you are presenting your question, you adhere to the question you submitted, which you have a copy of? Can I also ask the Cabinet members who are responding to be succinct in their responses? There will be no right of reply, and I ask that once you have received your response, you return to your seat. All questions asked and responses provided will be made available on the Council's website in the days after the meeting. Can I now ask Gary Hayes to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question? Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Good evening, everyone. Standards in real-world emissions. How effective are gas emission controls for vehicles? Think about the bonnet open switch for MOTs. Do you remember that? Secondary smoking in public. Over 10,000 people die every year because their partners smoke or they work in a smoky atmosphere. Domestic and commercial waste generation still has a large portion going to landfill. Light pollution and electromagnetic radiation, EMFs, are increasing to harmful levels. So the density of the fields are increasing past the limits, well past the limits. Will the councillors consider authorising a citizen science review using calibrated instruments on the various emissions mentioned above to consider the efficacy of the current implementation of standards for protecting health and quality of life?
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I now ask the Cabinet Member for City Management and Air Quality, Councillor Paul de Moldenberg, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much for your question, Mr. Hayes. I'm happy to say that the Council is committed to improving air quality as part of our Fairer Westminster commitments. And this includes reaching World Health Organization guidelines for air quality, which are more rigorous than UK national objectives. We're currently in the process of developing a new air quality action plan, and we will continue to work with leading research institutions, the community and campaign groups in this area as we develop our response and our further understanding of the issues. We're happy to consider wider opportunities for shared learning and input to further inform our fairer environment work where appropriate Thank you for your suggestions.
Thank you, Mr Hayes. You may now return to your seat. Can I now ask Rosemary Snellgar to join us at the front of the chamber to ask her question? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, councillors and everybody. I'm a coordinator of Westminster Citizens Climate Action Network, or WECAN, and we were pleased to see that Westminster City Council is generally doing quite well on the Council Climate Action scorecards of 2023. On a particular aspect, however, WCC scored 0, and this was on the question, has the Council adopted a new governance or decision-making process to put tackling the climate emergency at the heart of every Council decision made? Were only 17 out of 186 of the single-tier councils got full marks for this question. Will the Council take steps to join those 17 when the 2024 scorecards are assessed?
Thank you, Rosemary. I now ask the Cabinet Member for Climate, Ecology and Culture, Councillor Ryan Judd, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Rosemary. It's great to see you again. Great to have you asking the question tonight. I'm delighted that the first answer I'm giving as Cabinet Member is to WECAN. You know, I'm an avid follower of your work and subscribed for many years, and of course spoke to you prior to the election, so it's nice to now be here answering your question. And we're really happy to see the Climate Emergency UK scorecard results. Of course, we came out top for single-tier council in the whole of the UK, but as you will have seen, it was 62%, it wasn't 100% that we scored, which means there's still lots of work to do, including the important area that you've referred to. I'm happy to stand here and say that, yes, absolutely, we are going to be doing work to embed this throughout the entire council and striving to improve that score as we move towards next year. There's already work going on to embed this in the council, so there are 4 main areas that I'll touch on here. The first is the Climate Leadership Group, which we have, which is where all the Cabinet members come together to look at the progress of the climate programme and explore how their portfolios can better support this work. And it's aligned with our similar board that senior officers across the council attend. The second, we're updating and standardising our internal processes to ensure that climate considerations are considered throughout all council projects and process, including the climate implications being included in decision reports when they come up to Cabinet members for sign-off. Third, we're ensuring our financial processes support and strengthen our climate response, with all council projects that require capital funding now being required to submit a carbon assessment before we can approve funding, so that we all understand the impacts it's going to have on the climate. And finally, we're educating and engaging all staff on climate considerations through our internal Zeroing In campaign, which is regular comms and learnings for officers. So, running out of time, there's stuff going on. I'll make sure that you get a bit more information on it, and hopefully when the next scorecards come out, we'll score better in that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr Snellgar. You may now return to your seat. Can I now ask Saskia Soberly to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to ask a question on the lighting and associated opening times of the playground and Paddington Recreation Ground. We live nearby and we have 2 little children. The playground is very important to us and we are there nearly every afternoon. During winter, the playground closes very early in the afternoons due to missing lighting. Staff usually close the playground around sunset, which can be as early as 3:51 in December. Currently, the playground closes just after 4 p.m. This is problematic for us, as we try to keep our children physically active every day, and the sports field and tennis courts all have lighting and can be used until later. Having discussed this with other parents at the playground and our ward councillors, we understand that there have been discussions on installing playground lighting in the past. Please can you advise why this obvious shortcoming of Westminster's largest open space has not been addressed until now?
Thank you. I now once again ask the Cabinet Member for Climate, Ecology and Culture, Councillor Ryan Judd, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Sash, for your question, and again, for coming along tonight to ask it of us. as the new Cabinet member covering leisure as of last week, I was actually really happy to see this question come in from you, because it's meant that this has gone right to the top of my list of things to look at and brought immediately to my attention. I absolutely share your views on the importance of physical activity, particularly for our children and young people. So I was shocked to see the details in your question. The history you may well be aware of, but for the benefit of everyone else, the playground in Paddington Recreation Ground was initially built without any lighting, as there are no professional standards that exist for safe lighting in playgrounds, which is an issue in of itself, but that's in the past now. But it was found at the time that lighting could therefore cause shadows and dark spaces in and around some of the equipment, causing a potential danger for children playing at night. So, a bit of a safety question on that. On our sports fields and tennis courts, however, we do have professional standards of lighting which ensure safe implementation, so it's easier for us to light those spaces, which unfortunately has been more difficult on playgrounds. As I said, though, I understand the importance of playing physical activity for children. I recognise how a lack of lighting can make things pretty difficult in winter months. I personally sympathise. Playgrounds near where I grew up were a lifeline for all of us to be able to play and have a fun time with our friends. So this is why we're working to rectify this currently. We've engaged a specialist lighting company to help us find a solution that's safe and that meets the needs of everyone using the playground. I'm afraid I can't give you an exact time frame for this right now, but as I said, you've made sure this is at the top of my list, so I'll be following up on it personally, and I'll make sure we get an update to you over email. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr Subler, you may now return to your seat. Thank you. Can I now ask David Cooper to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question?
Good evening. Mine is for Mr de Molenberg, I suspect. Why is the Labour Council so anti-cars? Do they not appreciate that some people need them for safety, for health and age reasons? Why are they putting up the parking charges, particularly for electric vehicles, which I thought they wanted to encourage? To love cyclists is one thing, but to have cyclists on the pavement and dumped bikes is unfair on the elderly. Thank you.
Thank you. I now ask and Air Quality Councillor Paul de Molenberg to respond.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm delighted to see Mr Cooper, who I'm
delighted to see you, Mr.
for decades. I don't know many people living in the Knightsbridge and Belgravia ward, but I'm very pleased to know David. And thank you for bringing this question to full council this evening. I have to say, though, David, it would be completely wrong to say the council is anti-car. To the contrary, the City Council has supplied and installed 2,500 electric vehicle charging points, more than any other UK local authority in the country. And Westminster residents with an EV car will pay less than £1.50 a week to park their car outside their home, and visitors with EVs who pay to park will still be paying considerably less than in neighbouring London boroughs. Previously, pay to park charges for EVs were as low as 8 pence per hour, which is not sustainable in the context of controlling and maintaining curbside access to the very many uses that need that access. The Council also fully appreciates the role cars play in mobility and that some people aren't able to take public transport. That's why we manage approximately 700 disabled bays across Westminster. Finally, I agree that dumping bikes on the pavement and blocking access is unfair, not just to the older people, but for everyone trying to get around our city. We introduced a network of more than 300 parking bays last year, and that has eased the problem of dockless e-bikes being left on the pavement. It's eased the problem, it hasn't solved the problem.
Come and have a look.
And we need clear legislation from the government who, in order to fully control the bikes and the bike companies. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Cooper. Finally, can I ask Alia Taylor to join us at the front of the chamber to ask her question?
Good evening, everyone. Following the pandemic, we have seen a rise in mental health difficulties in young people especially. Will there be plans for more mental health support for young people in schools, but also outside, as waiting lists for mental health support provided by the NHS are at an all-time high?
Thank you. I now ask the Cabinet Member for Communities, Children and Public Protection, Councillor Aisha Les, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much for your question, Alia. And I absolutely share your concern for young people living with mental health issues here in Westminster. The Council's whole approach to emotional wellbeing and mental health support for children and young people is to invest in prevention and early intervention services and to support our NHS colleagues wherever possible to increase capacity and access to specialist services. Although nationally, CAMHS waiting lists are at an all-time high, but I am pleased to say that locally the CAMHS waiting times are reducing due to increased capacity and recruitment. We've made a significant progress in keeping waiting times under the national waiting time of 18 weeks and seeing the majority of children and young people for the first appointment within 4 weeks of referral. As of November 2023, 100% of children and young people were seen within national waiting times and 59% were seen for their first appointment in CAMHS within 4 weeks. Investment in prevention and early intervention also includes mental health support teams in 54 Westminster State schools, which provide whole school support to pupils, parents and teachers. We have also increased the number of mental health youth workers in our youth hubs for young people to access support in environments that they feel comfortable in. Lastly, the Council also commissions a wide range of emotional wellbeing and mental health supports, and the Council's We Got You, You Got This mental campaign is designed to promote a range of services that empower our young residents to feel confident accessing support services to support their mental wellbeing. Whilst we know that this can be difficult for young people living with mental health issues, the Council is absolutely committed to supporting them and their families and enabling them to live as healthy and a happy life as possible. Thank you very much for your question, Alia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. That was the last question in this item. Thank you all for taking the time to participate tonight. If you would like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you are more than welcome and can make your way to the public gallery. If you are leaving us now, I wish you a good night and thank you again for attending. Agenda item 8, questions. There are 45 minutes for questions. Will all members wishing to ask a question please indicate now and continue doing so until your request has been noted by the Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer. All done? Okay. Please remember that questions may be asked of a Cabinet Member or a committee chair. As you will be aware, Councillor Jude has joined the Cabinet, and so we'll take any questions on climate and ecology, parks and open spaces, libraries, registrars and culture. Congratulations, Councillor Jude. Councillor Aisha Les will, as part of her portfolio, now take any questions on children's services. In addition, as Councillor Sanquest is not able to join us this evening, Councillor Aisha Les will answer any questions on consultation reform, resident participation or equalities. Councillor Butler-Thalassis on community investment. Councillor Boothroyd on digital and customer service, and Councillor Jude on leisure. I will call members who indicated that they wish to ask a question after Councillor Swaddle has asked his 3 questions. Questions should be brief. Councillor Swaddle, I would like to take this moment to congratulate you on your appointment as the new leader of the opposition. Please now ask the first of your 3 questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And may I beg a little bit of latitude tonight, just to say thank you to the 2 previous leaders of my party here, and in particular Councillor Robothon for her leadership during the COVID pandemic. And I hope in due course that might be recognised more formally. My group is going through a bit of shock. This is the first male leader for some time, so they're just getting used to the fact, so bear with me. I'd like to ask a question to the Leader of the Council. At this difficult time of the cost of living crisis, can he confirm that he is working towards a council tax freeze for our residents?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and can I take this opportunity to join the Lord Mayor in congratulating Councillor Swaddle on his appointment as leader of the minority group. I look forward to what I'm sure will be spirited debates over the course of this evening and future council meetings. I'd also like to join him in giving my thanks and best wishes to Councillor Robothon, who gave enormous contributions to the City Council over the last 4 years as leader of the Conservative group and as leader of the Council during the pandemic, as has already been said. In terms of responding to the cost of living crisis, as he knows, we will be setting out the budget plans in due course. Our focus this week has been announcing how we will be providing targeted support to those most in need in our city, with a further £1 million investment in tackling the cost of living crisis, the focus of which is providing advice and support services across the city, providing support for food banks across the city, and providing further assistance to organisations in Westminster. We await to see whether the Household Support Fund will be extended, and then we will make further announcements in relation to the investment of the rest of the £1 million, adding to the previous £9 million the Council had put in to tackle this. So that's the focus of our cost of living push at the moment, and then we will come back with budgets in due course.
Supplementary. All I asked was, are you working towards it, not are you going to deliver it? I felt that was probably something you could commit to. Can you confirm that any increase will just be down to political decisions? As clearly in the papers presented to the Budget Task Force, there is more than enough capacity to make sure that there is not an increase this year.
4 million extra on TV.
As Councillor Swaddle is fully aware, we have faced 14 years of a government that has not been investing in local government. We've heard in the news over recent days that councils are at a breaking point. Westminster is in a better position than many. However, we have seen a £24 million increase in temporary accommodation because of the policies of this government that have failed to make the housing system work, and we are having to spend the most of any council in the country, which means we're facing enormous pressures on our budgets. We're facing, we've had to make £20 million in net savings this year, and as he knows from the budget papers, we are facing a situation where we will have to find a further 30 million next year, and significantly more on top of that in future years. So to imply that there is massive headroom in our budget is untrue. It is untrue because we have consistently year on year had to make massive savings. 200 million in net savings since 2010, almost 350 million if you look at the overall thing. So I do not agree that we are that it's plain sailing ahead. We need a government. We need a government that is going to commit to long-term stable funding for local government and bringing growth back to our economy. We do not have that at the moment, and therefore therefore we have to be very prudent with the council's finances, given those pressures upon us and what we're looking at in future years, unless there is a change of government and a change of approach to supporting local government here and across the country.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My next question is for the Cabinet Member for City Management. Residents across the city are saying how the e-parking new scheme is not working, something that residents raised this evening. He must know this, yet he denies this evening that there seems to be any problems. We have bays that are overflowing, and residents, when contacting the council, are told they should report it to 4 separate companies rather than to the council. Does he agree that that is unacceptable?
Lord Mayor, thank you for that question. As Councillor Swaddle well knows, we've been working extremely hard to regulate e-bikes since they became extremely popular a year ago. But what we do need is government legislation to back up our efforts. We are pleased that there is at last legislation going through Parliament for pedicabs, and we beg the government to add e-bike and e-scooter legislation to that pedicab bill, but that plea, not just on our behalf, but on behalf of all London boroughs, and indeed many provincial cities, has fallen on deaf ears. So we have no power other than the 1982 Highways Act with which to control e-bikes. Nevertheless, we introduced, and I think we're the first borough in London to introduce a citywide network of more than 330 parking bays to ease the problem of dockless e-bikes being left on the pavement. This has proved pretty successful, other than in about 15 locations around the city, where we do have problems because of the popularity, and particularly in the West End, in parts of Marylebone, and in parts of St James's Ward. In the rest of the city, by and large, it's working, but it's certainly there is a huge way to go, and that's why we are working with the e-bike companies on a daily basis to get them to deliver their side of the bargain. Our bargain was to provide a comprehensive network of parking locations right across the city. Their part of the bargain is to ensure that those bays were not overflowing, that bikes that were left on the pavement were cleared very quickly, and that they move those bikes very quickly. We will continue to do that. We will be helped more with legislation. We will be helped more by riders adopting a more behaviour way of operating and leading their bikes. But be assured that this administration will ensure...
I really must ask you to wind up now.
This administration will ensure that the dockless e-bikes across the city are controlled in a proper way, and we will keep badgering the government to provide the legislation. And if it's not this government, it will be the next.
Lord Mayor, I feel that the disrespect shown to this council by such answers at length, not even addressing the question. I will ask the question again because he did not listen. I said, what is this council doing so that you are not telling residents to have to report to 4 separate companies?
That's what the law requires.
No, it does not require it. It requires us as a council to be responsive to our residents. It would be straightforward to introduce a system which allowed residents to report once to us that goes on to others. It is more than capable of doing so, and I urge you to do so. Please, can you confirm, yes or no, will you look at improving reporting so that your resident can report overflowing bays simply to the council instead of doing it to 4 separate companies?
Lord Mayor, Report It does have a function so that you can report it to the council. It also has a function that you can report it to the bike companies themselves. And many residents already do that. And we get on to the bike companies, and part of the contract is that they have to remove those bikes that are obstructing the highway within a period of time. So we are on it, and the compliance is increasing, and it will continue to increase until we have the system working as we all would like it.
Loathed as I am to ask him another question, but it's an important issue. The reports this week showed that there was a 64% increase in fly tipping blighting our city. This administration came in saying they were going to solve the problem by waving their magic wand and their little bit of CCTV on some dumping sites. How's it going?
Exact quote.
Well, keeping Westminster's streets clean and safe for both residents and visitors is indeed one of the council's top priorities. And I was alarmed to see the BBC article using DEFRA data, which suggests a large increase in fly tipping since last year. But I would suggest that members, including Councillor Swaddle, proceed with caution instead of jumping to the wrong conclusion. We know, and this is an important question, so I hope I'll have some leeway in giving a full answer. People want to know the answers to this, and it's a good question. We know that we're making an impact because we've seen a reduction in rubbish dumps in known fly tipping hotspots. This was regularly fed back to us when speaking to our communities throughout 2023 as part of the Waste Action Squad local engagement. Similarly, we know that the total tonnage of waste collected by the council only increased by 2% between 21-22 and 22-23, and this increase primarily due to increased commercial waste sales rather than more fly tips being cleared. So that doesn't corroborate the idea of a huge rise in fly tipping. We also continue to hand out warnings and fixed penalty notices where we have evidence of who has been committing the offence. So according to the same DEFRA data, we carry out the second highest amount of enforcement actions across all local authorities alongside the education of businesses and residents. Finally, the Tidy Britain Group conducted an independent assessment of street cleanliness across a range of categories every 4 months. They report that fly tipping was at its lowest level, I repeat, lowest level in 5 years last year in Westminster. The Tidy Britain Group methodology for assessing cleanliness is widely recognised as being the benchmark approach to the issue. Look, I'm not saying that fly tipping isn't a problem at all, because it clearly is. But I don't believe that the BBC article is an accurate representation of the issue. And I encourage the council to look at the great work that is actually happening on the ground every day, 24/7, 365 days a year, by our city inspectors and by our contractors, Veolia. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor,
Answer that.
while the Cabinet member may think things are getting better, our residents are telling us by looking out of their windows that it's not.
All right.
Simple question. Can he confirm how many fines have been issued through this AI CCTV that he so proudly launched at this council?
Lord Mayor, I think there are very few
None, I
fines
believe.
issued.
The FOI.
I think there are a number of prosecutions pending at the moment as we move the
Any fines
as
issued?
we move the CCTV from one
FOI said
location
how many?
to another. So I think it's probably it's less than a handful.
That's how many
If there's
the FOI said.
But what I would say, and I think it is important, is that the CCTV AI system has acted as a deterrent. And so there is been less dumping at the 4 locations that we have identified so far. than there were previously. So although we haven't issued many fines, we have seen a less amount of dumping, and that's, at the end of the day, what residents
I think you're
want
starting
to
to
see.
believe your own press releases.
Councillor Fisher, would you please ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Finance and Council Reform. Has the Cabinet Member made any representations to the Secretary of State regarding the local government finance settlement?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I believe that before 2022, the Council did not always respond to the routine government consultation on the provisional local government finance settlement, even when the settlement was a poor one and it cut our funding. As someone once said, they were a bit like Charlie Brown, always believing Lucy's reassurances and always falling down when Lucy pulled the football away. We have had to make, as the leader said, 350 million in gross savings since 2010. However, this administration will always stand up for local services and local people. Working with officers, I agreed a response to the provisional settlement, which made it clear the government needs to address historical underfunding and the fact that services costs are rising much faster than general inflation. The City Council's response therefore set out the reasons why His Majesty's government's proposal was inadequate and was harming the people of Westminster. And although this was our council's response to dealing with our circumstances, many of the points that we were making were in line with those made by other London boroughs and other councils across the country, regardless of party control, and indeed of 40-plus members of Parliament, mostly Conservatives, this week organised by the County Councils Network. I do know that today the Secretary of State has announced some more funding. If you don't ask, you don't get.
If I may, Lord Mayor,
Sure.
just picking up on your last point, Cabinet Member, can you confirm whether the response from the government addresses your concerns in full or in part?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm afraid it is not anywhere near enough, and as people who have deep knowledge of this area will know, it feels like what we give you now, we will beat out of you in future. The most important point, I think, on that we were making to the government is that this is the 6th successive single-year settlement. As a council, we cannot properly plan long-term for service delivery and service improvement unless we have a long-term commitment about how much money we are going to be getting. We can't, for instance, reduce council tax. If we had a good year, that had a good year, we could, we might be able to reduce the council tax, but we can't do that because of the stupid referendum requirement, which says that it's based on 1 year's change. The number of households for which the council has to provide temporary accommodation has been increasing so significantly, and despite an unprecedented capital commitment that this council has made to find new homes, the revenue cost has taken up all our financial headroom and then some. I mean, this is very largely because of the government's decisions on local housing allowance rates. We can't find homes in the private rental market. We have to use the most expensive nightly booked accommodation. The government is not responding to that issue. If we did not have that, we could have used that 24 million to improve local services. The services grant, that was cut by 3 million. That squeezes funding on adult and children's social care. Most concerning, we have still had no announcement on the future of the Household Support Fund. Nearly 4 million to our poorest households. It runs out in March.
Councillor Harvey.
To the Cabinet Member Housing. All of us know just how hard many people are still suffering the impacts of the pandemic and indeed of Russia's war. You're going to be looking at social rents and you'll be looking shortly at service charges. Now, I know the books have to balance, that's how the Housing Revenue Account works, but could you reassure us that you'll do everything you can to keep both those charges down? Some have thought it's going for 7.5%, and I think, and I hope you think too, and we all think that's too much for Westminster.
Thank you for your question. like all local authorities in London, there will be a rent uplift. But one thing that we do have, unlike all other local authorities, is our rent support fund, which we will be launching, just like we launched last year, we'll be launching this year as well.
Relaunching.
With more money.
No.
Supplementary? Yeah.
I commend you on continuing support, which we started for the rent support fund. But you have to look much more wider. You have to look much more wider indeed. But particularly, I want you to go beyond that. And I want to ask you, responsible for housing across Westminster, half of our social housing residents live in housing associations, and you may well have seen the Housing Ombudsman's damning report earlier this week. What can you do with other borough leaders particularly to sit on those housing associations and keep their rents down as well, and while keeping rents down, actually put pressure on their sometimes appalling services?
It's supposed to repair homes with no money.
Firstly, the rent support fund was launched by the Labour administration last year.
Different name, same thing.
No, different things, different times. We still have the hard.
Secondly, the housing associations it's really important that we work closely with housing associations, and I am working very closely with housing associations. And one thing I'm really looking forward to is the fact that the social housing regulator will soon start holding housing associations accountable too.
Thank you. Moving on, Councillor Toll, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Question for the Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. Residents across the West End have rightly been concerned about the impact of the Oxford Street District programme. While they're pleased about the renewed focus on consultation and the more streamlined approach, concerns remain about the impact of displaced traffic into residential streets, air pollution and also access. So can he tell us whether the results of the public consultation on the Oxford Street programme give the Council confidence to proceed with the programme?
Thank you, Councillor, and may I also congratulate the new Leader of the Opposition on his appointment. I have good news. The consultation is very thorough, exemplary run by the officers. Over 2,000 individuals and organisations responded. Strangely, not the minority party. We didn't get a response from the minority party on this very important consultation. But we got 2,000. Roughly two-thirds in favour, 20% against. Those who were against the proposals tended to either want complete pedestrianisation, which we're not willing to go, or they want to rip out the pavements completely and turn it into a three-lane highway, which also we don't really want to do either. But we got some really good feedback, some examples of things we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting in proper trees with proper soil, not planters. We're going to be making sure all crossings have tactile paving, because that's important for accessibility. No double curbs, the guide dogs can't read them. And residents made very good points about potential rat running. We're going to put some bollards in to make sure that doesn't happen. And the Mayfair residents were explaining about the issues around noise, and so we're going to make sure we don't put seating in areas underneath people's windows. But generally, it was very positive, and our stakeholder group, consisting of residents and businesses and CFL, continues to meet, and we continue to have a very positive ongoing dialogue.
Thank you. Can the Cabinet Member please also explain what measures have been put in place to ensure that ongoing engagement with residents happen as the programme progresses?
Thank you, Councillors. So the most important one is the stakeholder group that meets quarterly, where we get everybody together in the City Hall and talk through the plans, but also there are regular one-to-one meetings between the council officers and the residents groups, and there are some consultations coming up, so if the minority party would like to respond to those. We're doing highways notifications for the Fitzrovia traffic changes. We're doing stage 1 design consultation for Oxford Circus and stage 2 for Oxford Street, and then jointly with Camden on the Hanway Street and Rathbourne Place schemes as well. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved, and very keen to hear from everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, your question, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. To the Cabinet Member for Communities, Children and Public Protection. A parent wanted to ask a question tonight about delays in refurbishing Tresham. Unfortunately, she was unable to get a slot this time. So I will ask, on behalf of parents with children with learning disabilities, why does Labour not prioritise the expansion and refurbishment of Tresham North? The completion dates have been missed 4 times and is now expected to be July 2024. Can you guarantee this will be completed in July, or will you come back with more excuses?
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Dean, and I can assure you that this is very much on top of my agenda, having taken over this from my predecessor. There has been a delay, as you are aware, and you've been included in scrutiny meetings as well, as to why there is a delay. But we can assure you that every effort has been made to make sure that we meet those deadlines. We are working with parents and children, and in the interim we're working. We've extended our QE2 school support to 20 existing children with complex health needs, offer until the centre reopens. But we can take this offline and we can have a discussion on further details if you like. Thank you.
Supplementary. The delay means children with challenging behaviour and complex needs have to be put on a waiting list, a very long waiting list. What are you doing to reduce this, and what alternative offer are you providing for those children?
As I've just said, Councillor Dean, we are accommodating 20 children at the QE2 centre to address some of those issues and to support them ongoing until the new centre opens.
That is not enough. The parents aren't happy.
But we are trying to do everything we can in our power to address this issue. Yes, we will. We will. We will. But we can have a discussion about this, Councillor Dean. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, would you like to ask your question, please?
Sorry. Is it Sullivan or Southern?
Yes. Sullivan. Yeah.
My question is from Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Voluntary Sector. What actions is the Council taking to improve the pay and conditions of home care workers?
Thank you very much for the question. This has to be the action that I'm proudest of that we have, that my department has done in the council, that we have succeeded in improving the pay of home care workers by £1.50 per hour. When we first came into power, and I asked how much home care workers get paid, I was told that they receive the London living wage, but at the time I didn't know that they only get paid for the amount of time that they are with a client, and they do not get paid for the gaps. I found that out when a resident emailed Councillor Carman and sent her shift pattern. And I realised that even though ostensibly people were getting paid the London living wage, that was not what they were taking home. So I'm very proud that we have achieved this pay rise, and that now people might take the London living wage home for it. Thank you.
How much you get for the assembly term?
Not for long.
Supplementary, £1.50 per hour, does that represent a lot for a home care worker? How important is that to them?
Thank you for asking that. So £1.50 an hour is equivalent to 12.5% increase. The £1.50 is over and above the increase that they will get automatically by being in the London living wage. The amount that it costs the council per year is 1.2 million, so that's why overall I would say it's a lot. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pitford, question, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Unfortunately, for the Cabinet Member for City Management and Air Quality, but it can be answered in one word. So,
I somehow doubt it.
EV parking charges were raised to reduce congestion. Under scrutiny, the Cabinet Member admitted having no data for congestion. Has the Cabinet Member yet been able to find a measure of congestion as a baseline to measure the success or failure of his policies?
Yes or no? No.
In the upcoming statutory consultation, what proportion of people rejecting this proposal would persuade the Cabinet Member to change his decision?
It's not a referendum. It's not a referendum. We are genuinely seeking views, and when we've received the views,
we'll carry on and do what we said.
Make a decision based on consideration of all those views.
Thank you. Councillor Hassan, your question, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Climate Action, Regeneration and Renters.
Oh, that's just regeneration.
Regeneration. homes for social rent in the West End Gate development in Little Venice? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I can. So the decision is now in the, well, we're in the what's called the pre-decision phase. So that means that the decision is up online with the earliest decision date possible, the 29th of January. So this will be for the purchase of 45 homes, which will be truly affordable in phase 3, I believe, of West End Gate, with those homes due to complete, we think at the moment, Q1 of 2026.
Supplementary, yep.
This is obviously great news for us. People in Little Venice believe that the huge development approved under the last administration delivers far too little for local people. Can you tell us a little bit more about the units and what will be made available? Thank you.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, yes, if there's one negative from this is, of course, that there aren't more of these homes available for the council to purchase. We do have a right to buy them. As a result of us purchasing those, we are able to, hopefully, and we intend to change the tenure of some of those so that they better fit in with the requirements of the residents in Little Venice who may be waiting for homes. So we will now have 18 social rent homes rather than the 12 originally planned, which is obviously an uplift of 50%. Rather than having 33 homes for shared ownership, we'll instead be switching those over to intermediate rent at London Living Rent, which is, as you might be aware, the most affordable level of intermediate rents that there are available. Yeah, it's a good step. It's a decent number of homes that will be added to the pipeline. Of course, it would have been better if there had been more.
Councillor Rigby, question, please.
Question for the Cabinet Member for Housing Services. Does the Cabinet Member agree with me on how important and beneficial it is to have mixed communities within each ward, especially when it comes to housing, with a good mix of leaseholder, intermediate for key workers and social rent? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Supplementary. With that in mind, in my ward I have an ongoing housing issue which concerns the potential loss of valuable social housing. The Heir estate own the land on which this important Octavia managed social housing is located. However, the lease on that land is due to expire in a mere 13 years' time, and residents are naturally worried, as you'd expect, about the potential loss of having to move away from the area. Will the Cabinet Member support me and my ward colleagues in lobbying both the Heir estate and Octavia to ensure these residents are not forced away? Yes or no? Yes.
Thank you very much for that question. And that is very concerning, and yes, I'd be happy to
Thank
support
you.
you.
Thank you.
Councillor Eagleton, would you kindly ask your question, please?
Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development, can he advise me of the policies the Council is pursuing to promote economic growth in Pimlico and wider Westminster?
Thank you, Councillor. Economic growth is an important question for this country at the moment because we need it to generate good jobs and rising tax revenues. It's particularly important for us in Westminster because London's central zone generates 10% of national output and we're 40% of that. So 4% of national income is controlled by Westminster Council. So that's why we produced our Fairer Economy Plan, which is our first programme for growth that's been produced in Westminster, and growth that's both sustainable and equitable. So there's three main pillars. We want to keep the West End humming, that's why we're investing in Oxford Street. We want to invest in small businesses, particularly in the context of our local high streets, and we want to help our residents get into those well-paid, rewarding jobs with career prospects that are available in central London, which is why we put together an anchor alliance of large organisations based in Westminster, British Land, Grosvenor, Land Securities, Microsoft and so on, which are going to work first up on employment skills. We have an employment skills board, investment in both ways and ways to give our young people the best possible start in life and connect them with those jobs they desperately need. Specifically with regard to the south of Westminster and Pimlico, Councillor Williams, as you know, is setting up the Pimlico programme, which will mirror the learnings we've got from North Paddington, and we'll be able to give some more details of that as we go.
Just wait your turn.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Supplementary, if I may. Please could you elaborate further on the policies that we're pursuing to create economic opportunities for young people within the borough?
Well, let me give you one I think really good example is the Digital Dash, which is a great programme we're running with Bloomberg and with the Paddington Development Trust, which is to give our young people the opportunity to design digital products in teams mentored by some of the wonderful companies that are located in Paddington, in Visa and Cognizant and Finastra and so on. So mentored by these great people from top companies, people can learn what it is in the world of work, but also learn what they need to do to get some of these really great, well-paid jobs with career prospects which are on our doorstep.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley, your question, please.
Be very concise. Westminster residents' businesses are facing serious levels of crime and antisocial behaviour, with an absence of police presence on the streets, despite an increase in police numbers. If I look in Marylebone, so what have we dealt with? Open drug dealing and drug usage, groups of youths threatening families with young children, with violence and stabbing in public gardens, dangerous and aggressive and threatening cyclists and delivery riders, threatening the safety of pedestrians.
Is there a question?
Yeah, it's coming right now.
If there is, who's the question?
Oh, come on! Lord Mayor! Lord Mayor!
Excuse me, who is the question for?
Cabinet Member Community Protection.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, well, shall I repeat it or not?
No.
No, good. And if we go to Marylebone High Street, Marylebone High Street is endemic shoplifting, and that often involves mail robbers using threats of violence and intimidation against what's a disproportionately female workforce. In one case, a knife was pulled on a worker who tried to stop someone shoplifting. So the question I have, given what's happening in Westminster, could the Cabinet Member please tell us what action she's taking in terms of discussions with senior police officers and the London Mayor to improve policing in Westminster?
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Rowley, and I thank you and your ward colleagues for raising issues with me in the past. I do send them off to our policing teams to have regular patrolling in the area that you have identified. We are in continuous discussions with the police about how we can better secure our areas and make them feel safer. It is about reporting, obviously, if it's a crime, it needs to be reported to the police because it is a crime. We are working very hard with our city inspectors and our neighbourhood coordinators as well about how we are targeting some of those hotspot areas, so those patrolling is increased as well amongst our own officers. But I do plead you and your residents to continue calling 999, because if a crime has been taken place, it needs to be reported through the correct avenues in order so these can be raised as hotspot areas with the police as well. We know what they are, but the police need to know them too. So by reporting them to the police, we are making sure that they have them raised as a red flag so that they can patrol them more. And I thank you again and your colleagues for raising issues with me in the past, but I can assure you that we are working very hard with the police and our own officers in trying to target some of these culprits and some of the crime that is happening locally in our wards. Thank you.
I think that's a rather long-winded answer to say that there's been no strategic discussions with senior police officers.
There has been.
Well, and no discussions with the Mayor. Your London Labour Mayor. That's to do with resourcing and strategy behind policing.
Yes.
Not just reporting things in, because that does not work. We see that on the ground. So the question is, you go several layers up to the top policeman responsible for Westminster and the London Labour Mayor, talking about the failures of policing in this city. And that clearly hasn't happened.
I can assure you, Councillor Rowley, we have had meetings with MOPAC, with GLA. We have meetings with Louise Pudderfoot, the BCU commander, and our neighbourhood coordinator inspector, Beth Peary. She is fully aware of the issues that you have identified and actually all the issues that we have in our borough. And I can assure you we are working very hard to bring this down. I wish I had the magic wand to wish it all away, but I can't. Crime happens, but if it is a crime that is being committed, you call 999. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Piddock, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Leader of the Council, Councillor Puck. You've partly answered this question, but what I'd like to know is what...
Teacher scare doesn't work for me. Well, wife's the head teacher, that ain't going to work.
I've got one anymore. I finished with that.
Still got the step.
What will the council be doing this year to support vulnerable residents in the crisis that we have in cost of living?
Thank you so much, Councillor Piddock. So, as I've announced this week, we are adding a further £1 million to our cost of living support package. This initially, we'll be initially investing almost £400,000 in extending the contracts for 4 advice services across the city at Cardinal Hume, Z2K, Paddington Laws and HUK, operating across the city, and their work has been invaluable in helping people access the benefits that they're entitled to, helping them access services in the city and getting complex problems resolved. We've linked that with our food support, again, to try and integrate these things together. And food support is a significant part of what we are doing with our investments. They're helping young people's projects, such as the Smithson's Family Centre I was with earlier this week. And then we are waiting to see what is most appropriate to invest the further £600,000 in, once we know whether the government does the decent thing and extends the household support fund for another year, rather than playing political games ahead of the election. What is most important, one of the most important things we can do is give that security for the most vulnerable families in our city who have benefited from those schemes. As you know, we've done a lot of different things over the last few years, expanding free school meals first into primary and then from 3 to 14, additional support on top of the household support fund in holidays and everything else. So there's a lot more that we can do to help people, but we need that clarity from government going forwards to mean that we can help all of those people who are most in need.
Thank you.
Just a quick supplementary. Do you have any idea how many people have already benefited from our schemes?
So, in lots of different ways, I think that the sum total is about 31,000 households. It may even be more than that. But there's a range of different things. So I apologize for reading some quick statistics. Over 1,084 households have received a direct support for vouchers linked to also getting financial and energy advice. 2,700 people have attended our advice and support services, 14,000 children receiving a free school lunch every day, 330 households are providing energy support and advice. We've provided 7,000 supermarket vouchers to people. 21,000 young people have been received access in the holiday activity and food programme, again, which is why we need clarity on the next phases of that. Food charities and food banks have been supported 36,000 people, 13,500 households just between April and October of last year. So lots of people been helped, but we need more. We are going to do our bit. We need the government to step up and extend the household support fund, and then we need a new government later this year.
Here, here.
It's the Cabinet Member, it's Councillor Aisha Less. That's a Cabinet Member for Public Protection Licence and Community Support Children's Services. She's got quite a lot of plate. Can you confirm, please, why councillors in Marylebone will no longer be included in Neighbourhood Board Coordinator meetings, which I understand is not the case in other wards?
Shameful.
This is news to me, Councillor Scarborough, so I will take that up. That shouldn't be the case. Every councillor should be involved in all neighbourhood coordinator meetings, as has been.
I've had to have a conversation with the one at Marylebone, and I understand it's the same as St James, but it's not the same, for example, in Little Venice. But we're told that we're not having we're not being involved anymore because it's only the professionals professionals and therefore councillors are...
That is incorrect, but I will chase that up and come back to you. Thank you very much for raising it.
Thank you, Councillor Less.
Good question.
Here.
So that's the end of time allowed for questions. Agenda item 9, councillor issue. I call Councillor Jim Glenn to speak on his chosen topic of housing repairs in Pimlico.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. May I start by thanking housing officers for the hard work that they put in difficult circumstances every day of the week across the city, but especially for their work in my ward. They have an impossible task and work hard to the benefit of residents and leaseholders across the council's 22,000 residential properties. And I do believe that councillors across both parties share in a common goal of wanting the very best for our residents, particularly the most vulnerable. However, across the various estates in Pimlico, there are increasingly worrying events coming to light, and there is a common theme. Lillington is plagued by aged plumbing. Residents experience catastrophic leaks, ruining their belongings and forcing them out of their homes. The delays and poor repairs following such disasters, allied with a failure to adequately compensate residents within a reasonable time frame, happen time and time again. There have been long-running cases across the whole estate, from Forsyth, Stourhead, Charlwood, Parkinson, as well as the very sad case recently reported in the local press from Repton House, where the death of the house-proud elderly neighbours occurred in what the wider family described as squalor over the Christmas period, following a leak into their home. There have been council tenants sleeping on the floor or on the sofa for months as they cannot replace bedding ruined by leaks from outside their own flat. The council is currently failing in its duty of care to these people. These failures are not limited to Lillington with its defective plumbing. In Abbots Manor, a young family was left with black mould in their children's bedroom for over a year, and then, when windows that did not close were finally replaced with double-glazed units, these did not fit to the point where you could see through the gaps around them, and they were left insecurely fixed. They were left like this with the scaffolding up for 6 months. Amazingly, the scaffolding was taken down this morning, but the job is still not completely finished. There were several flats in Glastonbury House, which is a sheltered block for our most vulnerable elderly residents, who had been left without light for months. Instead of proper repairs, they were given a plug-in torch, which is hard to manage when you have a walker to get around. In Russell House, long-delayed major works have been delayed again. A protective crash deck was erected 6 months ago due to the bits of building falling off. Now, this is obviously a necessary precaution, but it leaves the flats below in permanent darkness and facilitates antisocial behaviour. The major works are not due to start for a year, meaning those residents will be living in darkness for that year. There are windows nearly falling out all over the building due to minor repairs not being done properly as we wait for the promised major works. There is a common theme here. The repairs service of Westminster City Homes is failing. Labour have been in power now for nearly 2 years. There's a limit to how long you can hark back to the past and blame others. This is not national government's fault. It's not your predecessor's fault. This is not the officer's fault. I think it was Mario Cuomo who said that you campaign in poetry and govern in prose. Before the last election, you promised to sort out housing and the repairs service. Yet in the last 2 years, my residents' experience has become worse, not better, with senior officers leaving in droves. There have been 3 estate surveyors in Lillington in the last 18 months alone. I'm not saying that it was perfect under the previous administration. It certainly was not. We brought the whole housing service back in-house, recognising the failures of City West Homes. And we're embarking on a programme of doubling the number of estate officers and implementing estate action plans and other improvements. Now, we are delighted that you've carried on with these reforms, but I implore you not to just set up another talking shop, residents panel, forum, discussion discussion group, but to actually get on with it and make some concrete improvements, working with us and listening to the residents. There have already been many suggestions of ways to improve, from employing a proper clerk of works to allowing residents sign-off for repairs in their own homes. These are not individual bits of casework. There is systematic failure here. There's been a revolving door for officers who actually do the work on the ground, which must be a reflection of the impossible tasks they're being given to do. We would like to work with you to turn this around, as our residents deserve better.
I call Councillor Lisa Begum to reply.
Thank you, Councillor Connect. I too am a ward councillor for Pimlico, as well as a tenant, and I know from speaking with residents and neighbours that our current repair service is not delivering for them and hasn't been for a long time. I want to acknowledge the individual cases you have mentioned and say I am aware of these, but will not discuss these in detail in the chamber. I am of course happy to discuss this outside of the meeting. The golden thread running through the Fairer Westminster strategy is authentic and meaningful engagement and consultation with our residents on the things that matter most to them. And I know that an efficient and high-performing repair service is important to our residents. That is why we have launched residents' working groups on repairs and major works, and we will shortly consult on a repairs policy for Westminster. This will include a policy on damp and mould and will set out the standards and expectations for the repair service. We continue to work with local residents associations across Pimlico, including Russell House, Lillington and Longmoor and Churchill Gardens, to address concerns regarding repairs and major works, amongst other issues. Last week, I met with residents from the Lillington and Longmoor estate and listened to their concerns and frustrations regarding the repair service. The timeliness, the communication and the quality of repairs were recurrent themes, and I am clear that performance must improve, not just for residents of Pimlico, but for residents across Westminster. We are incredibly fortunate in Pimlico to be home to estates like Lillington, celebrated for their design and heritage, so delivering a repair service that is estate-based would allow our repairs teams to build a working knowledge of particular estates and work with estate managers, residents associations and local councillors to identify and prioritise communal repairs and issues. As a first step towards this, I'm really pleased that we will shortly be piloting a communal in-house repairs team at Lillington and Longmoor. This will be for 6 weeks and is a dedicated team of 6 whose sole focus will be to work through a programme of communal repairs on the estate before moving on to other estates. This will of course also provide us with a comparator for our current contractors, and I hope to be able to roll out teams like this to other estates across Westminster. In addition, we are introducing dedicated sheltered housing repairs operatives to ensure for our most vulnerable residents. This initiative has started at Parkinson House with a view to expanding to other sheltered housing schemes over the coming year. Identifying and providing additional support for our vulnerable residents must be a central focus in everything we do. That is why our proposed repairs policy will provide an enhanced repair service for residents who are vulnerable. This includes households with children with disabilities and health conditions. And in recognising that many residents' first point of contact is with the call centre, staff have been supported with additional training to help identify vulnerable residents at the earliest possible point and flag this so that any reasonable adjustments can be made. The experience of Pimlico residents with our repair service is replicated across Westminster. You will know that we work with several legacy contractors across housing services to deliver our in-house and communal repairs, and we are working with them to actively manage their performance. In closing, I want to reaffirm my commitment that all residents should, as a basic, expect to live in a safe, warm, secure home that is well maintained. While a great deal of good work is already underway to improve the delivery of our housing services, I know that there is still much to do. I'm always happy to take up any specific cases you or any of our Pimlico colleagues may have. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this item, and we now move on to the remaining agenda items: party business, reports for full council and notice of motion. The topics selected for debate and the names of those down to speak were tabled on the order paper sent to all earlier this week. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. Agenda item 10, party business. The majority group have selected the topic, a new public realm CCTV network for Westminster, for debate as their business this evening. This is as set out in the order paper. I now call Councillor Adam Hugg to open the debate.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to open this debate this evening on CCTV and set out this administration's plan to address some of these issues that blight so many of the lives of our local residents the most. Antisocial behaviour, crime in their local neighbourhoods, noise and waste. This delivers on and goes beyond a key pledge in our manifesto from the 2022 election. It also reverses a decision by the former council leadership, which I remain convinced, and we were clearly saying so at the time, was a mistake and also a missed opportunity. The previous administration had allowed the council's former CCTV network to degrade over time to a point where it wasn't giving a great service and was focused on the Met's priorities, not necessarily ours. We were deeply concerned at the time of these CCTV cuts would hamper the response to crime and disorder in our city, particularly in those areas that weren't able to fall back on the private cameras and TfL cameras that the former administration talked about as an alternative. And ultimately that was to the detriment of our residents. At the moment, Westminster is an absolute outlier within inner London as the only one that doesn't operate our own CCTV network in the public realm. And this is despite persistent issues on ASB and crime that affects the residents' daily lives. It's the responsibility of the council to play our part in helping make our streets safer and make our residents feel more secure in their own homes. And instead of letting the service decline and then washing their hands of the problem as they did in 2016-17, they could have reimagined the service in a way that better meets the needs of local residents, which is what we have announced this month. Since late 2022, officers have been exploring potential options for deployment and reintroduction of CCTV in Westminster. We've employed the work of a dedicated security consultant who's provided invaluable support to our officers, as well as working with the officers who've joined the council who have significant experience of operating CCTV networks elsewhere. So, from this summer, we will be rolling out the network of 100 mobile digital cameras to hotspots across the city. So under Labour, we're investing £500,000 in purchasing new cameras, and we'll invest around £600,000 a year to run the new network, and also provide additional capacity and expertise that will be used to help improve the performance of existing CCTV networks on the council's housing estates. Overall, this is about roughly half the cost of the previous network that was deployed in Westminster under the Conservatives. These new cameras will be placed in priority areas for Westminster residents and will help the police and our officers work together to crack down on antisocial behaviour and local crime and the evidence to be used for prosecution in court. The police-run cameras will continue to monitor the pan-London hotspot areas that they identify, particularly within the central activity zone, while the new cameras from the council will be, as I said, targeted at local priorities. This will be an agile system which can respond to different issues on the ground over time, with these digital cameras being able to move to different locations, giving them a major advantage over the previous fixed CCTV camera system. And that resource we're getting in place will be a specialist officer who will help coordinate the development and delivery of this service, as well as helping work with housing ASB officers to better understand what can be strengthened in their systems to meet the needs of tenants and leaseholders, something Councillor Begum will talk about in a minute. And while officers are working to finalise the policy framework for the development of this new network, it will be an important opportunity for the reform scrutiny process to play an active part in helping us take the next step in our journey towards implementation. So, Lord Mayor, I'm proud of the work that's gone on so far to get us to this point, and I look forward to these important resources to be deployed across the city. They are not a silver bullet to address these persistent issues we face in Westminster, but they are an important tool in the toolbox, one that the council has been without for many years, and we believe will help make a difference in how we tackle antisocial behaviour and crime in Westminster.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Aisha Lest to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As the leader has said, CCTV is just one of the strings we have in our bow in the fight against the scourge that is antisocial behaviour in the borough. Anyone who lives, works or visits Westminster knows that we have so much to offer here, including our rich cultural scene, thriving local economy, fantastic transport links, vibrant nightlife, and our access to some of the best green spaces in London. However, we also know that because of antisocial behaviour in the borough, our residents, workers and visitors often report concerns about their safety in the city. That is why we as a council have committed to doing everything in our power to stomp out ASB. Last year we launched our ASB strategy, produced alongside partners, victims, businesses and residents. This is a 5-year strategy that will help us ensure that our communities have the strength and knowledge to support our efforts to reduce ASB, and that perpetrators will both find it harder to offend and will be held to account when they do. This is where the use of CCTV cameras will come in particularly handy for us. Having CCTV cameras will help deter would-be perpetrators, stopping crimes before they even happen. Where CCTV cameras don't work as a deterrent, which unfortunately is too often the case, having CCTV footage can help us assist with identification of perpetrators and capture evidence for conviction to help bring those responsible to justice much more swiftly. The cameras will also help us measure the number, type and place of incidents, which will help us inform where best to place our deployable network of cameras. Being able to move cameras around the city will bolster our crackdown on ASB, as this means we can really target known ASB hotspots and get to the root of the issue in those areas, helping local people feel safer in their homes and on the streets. We know that ASB looks different across the city due to differing levels of tolerance and thresholds, as well as the broad definition of ASB itself. However, whether it is a resident enduring an overly noisy neighbour, a business having to close early, or a community trigger applicant seeking further support, we know how that ASB has the potential to be incredibly damaging and destabilising. We're supporting those and supporting those that have been impacted by ASB is and always be our top priority for the council, and we are committed to ensuring that all victims are guaranteed the same level of response and support. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Ote Osoka to speak, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased with the announcement of these 100 mobile cameras as a start of some type of CCTV presence within residential areas outside of the ones existing in our states and West End public realm. Though living in Westminster overall is great, London is not as safe as it used to be, and in an ideal world, we shouldn't need CCTV. But there are degenerates whose life's mission is to violate our residents, and they unfortunately get away with it, often due to combined lack of police resources and evidence. That being said, Conservatives deserve some type of credit for this announcement. After all, if it wasn't for us, we may not have had anything about CCTV mentioned until 2026. But because Conservatives care about our residents, listen to our residents and act immediately for our residents.
Let the councillor speak.
Our response to increased rates of muggings and thefts, for example in St John's Wood, was to request surveillance and extended coverage, which I believe has at least pushed Labour to get to this point in spring 2024. I say that because how embarrassing would it look if two Conservative wards worked together to aid their community in securing self-funded cameras for their area before the Labour administration even had anything of the sort in place. I say embarrassing because it is what has happened. Labour claims to be eager in wanting Westminster residents to be and feel safe, but let's go back 7 months ago at the first, I believe, public participation session at Council. Linda Taggart, chair of the Regent's Park Met Ward Police, asked the then Cabinet Member for Communities and Public Protection permission, for 6 fixed, self-funded cameras to be installed across St John's Wood, including on the High Street, Circus, Abbey and Wellington Roads. This petition was made as a response to the hoops that the administration were already putting us under in regards for CCTV coverage, because our residents, schools and local businesses asked us what we, the Conservatives, would do. Our residents, students, whose only crime was wanting to have an after-school coffee with friends outside Wellington Place, being robbed of their electronic devices, including their phones and scooters. Cash point users, especially the elderly, being caught out by distraction thefts on Circus Road, with the perpetrators often hitting multiple people a day because they had the confidence in the lack of CCTV in the immediate vicinity to catch them. Friends and families wanting to enjoy a bite to eat, dining al fresco on our high streets and parade of shops, and losing their belongings in the process, and of course shoplifting across local retailers, which we've all come to know. Nearly 1,000 signatures were presented to the Lord Mayor, yet it still took months for the Cabinet member to approve the 3 cameras which have finally been installed on Circus Road and the High Street as of late autumn 2023. Our local Met Safer Neighbourhood teams have stated to us how our cameras and more CCTV in general would help close out casework quicker and aid with their prosecutions. More CCTV would help the police monitor the situation on hand, and assistance can be provided to bystanders and first responders when necessary. A few queries do still remain. With crime hotspots hitting our streets, the data is always changing. Will these extra units be moved in a cyclical fashion, daily, weekly, fortnightly? Will each ward get 5 units with the remaining 10 in the places that are extreme at that point in time? If my colleagues and I receive reports of, God forbid, increased robberies on Norfolk Road, will a unit be posted there immediately? Again, will Labour seek to put the mobile units in their, and I quote, favourite wards, as has been shown with other programmes established by the administration? After all, there are vulnerable communities in Regent's Park and Abbey Road as much as there are in neighbouring Church Street and Maida Vale. Finally, will the frequency of updates regarding collected data be provided on an ad hoc basis, i.e. can councillors request this data, or will it filter down from reported and police reports to us only after a certain period of time? There are lots of questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing them answered, but I reiterate my opening statement that I welcome anything that will make my residents feel more secure in their daily life.
Hear, hear. Councillor Lisa Begum, would you speak, please? Thank you.
Recognise it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Tackling antisocial behaviour is one of our priorities as part of improving our housing offer. I welcome this announcement that will not only deliver a new public realm CCTV for the benefit of all Westminster residents, but will also bring about a closer examination of our housing CCTV assets. The report of the external consultant last year highlighted a number of opportunities for improvement within the existing housing CCTV arrangements. This provision has grown organically over the years, with 846 fixed cameras in estate lifts and 621 fixed or deployable cameras on estates, which have been installed over the years to tackle specific and persistent issues, and of course will always continue to look at our processes and procedures to ensure its ongoing effectiveness. Tonight, I'd also like to touch on the benefits we're seeing from the mobile security pilot on our estates, which has been up and running since November 2022. This pilot combines our existing mobile camera deployment with trained officers in an intelligence-led way. The cameras can be moved to hotspot locations identified through evidence gathered through resident engagement, ASB teams and the police. The cameras are supported by a roving patrol of trained officers who can attend to incidents, survey hotspots and gather intelligence to identify, deter and remedy any antisocial behaviour where possible. The pilot, which was initially on Lisson Green, Hallfield, Lidford and Lillington and Longmore estates, has since been expanded due to demand to take on more reactive requests across the city. This joined-up approach means that persistent issues such as graffiti and other forms of ASB can be addressed, and the on-the-ground evidence gathering has enabled the ASB teams to achieve real successes in court, most notably with the partial closure of a property being used as a drug den. I'm pleased that this service has been extended until April this year, which gives us time to undertake consultation with residents who have benefited from the service and consider whether it should be made permanent. Lord Mayor, I welcome that we're replicating a similar approach on our public realm, an agile system that supports and is supported by trained council staff, all concentrating on addressing problems that most affect local people and will help us in the delivery of a fairer and safer Westminster. While this recent announcement does not include additional CCTV assets on our housing housing estates. The lives of our tenants and leaseholders are impacted by antisocial behaviour, nuisance and waste in the roads that border our estates, and will go some way towards making a difference for them. Alongside the delivery of CCTV on the public realm, the team will be working to align our current housing CCTV offer with the needs of the council as well as the needs of our tenants and leaseholders. We know that CCTV is just one extra tool in the arsenal of devices and tactics that we can use to keep our residents safe. It doesn't replace intelligence gathering from officers, it doesn't replace our ASB team following through with casework, and it certainly doesn't replace the intel gathered from conversations that housing officers have with our residents. From Churchill Gardens in the south to Boundary Road in the north, it is by bringing all these things together that will enable us to reduce ASB and keep our estates safe. Lord Mayor, I look forward to the delivery of the public realm service in the summer and working with my colleagues to continue to keep our residents safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Mitchell to speak, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, the expectations of the public about the use of CCTV and the quality of CCTV technology is constantly changing. In my view, the public welcome the use of CCTV to detect serious crime, but whether they would be welcome its use to catch pedestrians for minor offences like littering the pavement is debatable. Technological improvements in recent years have made cheap, high-quality cameras for a variety of uses widely available to everyone. The paper on the CCTV presented to the recent Climate Action, Environment and Highways Policy and Scrutiny Committee tried to explain the complex background to the use of CCTV in Westminster. When I was first elected to the council in 1998, the council had a CCTV trust that operated cameras across St James's and the West End ward. Much of the capital funding for these cameras had come from the private sector, hence the trust governance model, although the trust was chaired by a local councillor. The cameras were monitored from a control centre in the basement of the Trocadero complex, but by the mid-2010s, the Trocadero building was due for redevelopment, and so a new home was needed for the control centre. Another pressing issue was that the cameras were ageing and their analogue hardware was in need of replacement with up-to-date digital cameras. When an analysis of the recent access requests for camera footage showed that nearly 100% were from the police, the council took the view that the police should run the camera network and gave them the net access to 1.55 million of Westminster capital funding. At the time, unlike Westminster Labour, the Labour Mayor of London recognised the primary responsibility for these cameras should be the Met. Another change in recent years has been the increasing scrutiny of CCTV, especially when used for covert surveillance. A surveillance code of practice issued by the Home Secretary under the Protection of Freedoms Act 2012 gives extensive rules and regulations about the use of cameras in the public realm and talks about the best way to ensure that people's civil rights are not compromised by having a data protection impact assessment before each surveillance camera system is installed. This shows the administrative and legal challenges the council will have to deal with the proposed network for movable cameras, because every time they move, there will need to be new assessments and all the relevant paperwork. The summary of the Policy and Scrutiny report mentioned an external security consultants report commissioned by the council, which shows the wide variety of uses of CCTV across Westminster. And we've seen reference to it by all councillors in terms of police network, DFLs, the council's cameras, at box junctions, the long-standing CCTV network in our council estates, and the plethora of cameras operated by the private sector inside and outside the building. St James's ward is no exception. For example, we've had acoustic cameras in the Pall Mall area for some 2 years. But it took quite some time to put in place the relevant legal paperwork for a public space protection order to give the legal justification of the cameras, and there was constant monitoring of their necessity. And it shows the key problem in dealing with cameras in the public realm. Of course, if crime statistics were the only criteria for positioning these new cameras, then they would continue to be just in St James's Ward and West End Ward. But quite rightly, I'm sure other colleagues will agree that it is not only just for the tackling of crime that these are needed, but as the PNS report suggests, use them for antisocial behaviour, quality rights concerns, which are not the direct responsibility of the police, is necessary. So, as Councillor Ortega-Osaka says, the Conservative group will want to know what will be the criteria for putting a camera in specific locations, how often they will be moved, and what will be the process for keeping local councillors up to date. I look forward to hearing more from the council in the future. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Paul de Moulton there, please. Thank you.
Keeping Westminster streets clean and safe for both residents and visitors and people who work here is, as I've said already this evening, is one of the Council's top priorities. And the Council's new wave of CCTV cameras, to be rolled out this year, will help us crack down on the ASB and crime, including rubbish dumping, that plagues many of our streets. This network of 100 digital cameras will be able to be moved from to known hotspots. It will help us identify perpetrators. It will provide video evidence of fly tipping, and importantly, will capture evidence for conviction. And crucially, it restores a service which was axed by the previous Conservative administration in 2016. We can only turn the cameras on because the Conservatives turned them off. But it's not a panacea, as we've said. On their own, they're not going to solve the problem entirely. The use of CCTV cameras has to be combined with preventative measures, with enforcement, and with other technology to reduce the antisocial behaviour on our streets, including rubbish dumping and fly tipping. So it's only one part of a range of interventions, which also includes community engagement and education. It also involves incentivising proper disposal of people's rubbish, which we're doing, or other technology like bin sensor technology to alert Veolia when bins required emptying to avoid overflow. So we're determined to keep our streets clean. We're determined to make Westminster a really clean borough that people who live here, who work here, who visit here, feel proud to walk our streets. And CCTV will help us achieve that over the coming years. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Thank you all. I now call Councillor Adam Hogg to reply.
It is too short.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much for tonight's debate. And I think I'm pleased that there is agreement that these new cameras will be an asset to our city, but rightly want to work with all of you to develop their rollout. Thank you very much, Councillor Mitchell, for some of the history of the previous CCTV network. And obviously, I was leading the opposition at the time and remember this debate very well. I'm glad that we were in agreement that a significant part of the problem was that the previous network wasn't invested in over many years and wasn't fit for purpose by 2016. But obviously, the previous administration did have a choice either to retool and revitalise its offer when it was leaving the Trocadero and at that point, or to do what it did, which which was to close the network and provide some funding to the Met Police for cameras that were entirely within the wider West End. The previous council's network did have provision across the city, but was still majoritively based on the Met's priorities in the West End. As we've been clear, this is not replicating that. We are wanting to recognise that the Met has a very separate role to play and will continue to play in providing both overt and covert CCTV to tackle its priorities across the city. Thank you, Councillor Otisaka, for your comments on this and your commitment to the residents of your ward. But let's be absolutely clear: the process for the restoration of CCTV in the City of Westminster was well underway before the petition was brought here and you started raising this. It was an issue that we've been working on since we came in, because it was something that we were very annoyed that the previous administration had done to Westminster. We are delighted that nevertheless, we will want to work with the Met Police to still deliver cameras where they can to meet their priorities, and it is important that work has continued. I'm aware that 3 cameras have been deployed in St John's Wood with the combination ward councillors and officers working with the police to deliver that, and I'm aware that further progress on that should be forthcoming. But that's part of the picture. But the key focus is that this is a flexible tool to meet the city's demands, and want to work with all councillors and through the scrutiny process to help flesh out the balance of different priorities that the city will be asked to meet. We've been clear that our focus is crime in local residential areas. That's not necessarily the Met's top numbers in some of our high visitor areas, but the things that matter to local people. And the neighbourhood coordinator process is going to be absolutely key here, working with councillors and officers and other key local stakeholders to help shape local priorities that will then feed into the citywide policy and prioritisation tasking. The CCTV policy is being developed, and as I've said at the beginning, I see scrutiny having an important role in helping us shape those balances, because there is a trade-off between breadth of coverage and focus on hotspots, and I think there needs to be a balance between the two, and that but it has to be a legally and appropriate policy-compliant approach to do that. But I recognise the importance of having breadth as well as depth that has been identified. So really keen to work with you on fleshing those things out. But we're ultimately very clear. This has been a long-standing demand from local residents. I think we have to be clear this is not a panacea, but it is something the residents have clearly demanded. What we're providing is a flexible resource. Councillor Otisaka, it can't be moved daily, but on an evidence-led basis can be moved within a reasonable period of time to meet emerging priorities within the city. Obviously, the more the cameras are moved, the shorter the use of the capital asset is. But nevertheless, we expect them to be moved, but it has been an evidence-led process, working with the neighbourhood coordinators and others to set the prioritisation. So, we are not promising miracles here, but we are promising that this council, under Labour, will take action to keep our residents safer, unlike the provision. Thank you.
That concludes the debate on the item chosen by the majority party. The opposition group have selected the topic Tackling Crime and Antisocial Behaviour in Westminster for debate as their business this evening. This is as set out in the order paper. I now call Councillor Caroline Sargent to open the debate.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It's an honour to make my first speech as Deputy Leader of the Minority Party, and I'm committed to convincing the great people of Westminster to make my party the majority party again in 2026. Hey. Crime and antisocial behaviour are on the rise across London. We've all acknowledged it tonight. In Westminster, we know it is the #1 issue so many of our residents care about. Why should people in Westminster have to accept blatant drug dealing on our streets or breathing in clouds of marijuana smoke on almost every corner in our city? And it's heartbreaking to see more and more people sleeping rough in this city, especially after Nicky Aiken's efforts while leading this council. But it's intolerable to put up with the antisocial behaviours of some, not all I stress, of the street population, including public defecation along with open drug use, or the many fights that break out in front of children on their way to school. Accepting the mental health issues behind much of it, the Cabinet member claims she's taking steps, and please be specific in your speech, Councillor S. But our residents believe the problems are getting worse over the last year, especially. So we heard a little bit from Councillor Otoko about St John's Wood, and let me give you a sense of how things have got in Abbey Road. In my first weeks as a councillor, we had a shooting, a discharge of a firearm at a pub up at the edge of Westminster. Fortunately, there were no reported injuries, but less than a year later, on a packed Friday night, the same pub was firebombed with Molotov cocktails by a group of masked men armed with machetes. And even before that, residents were putting up with noise and nuisance until the early hours of the morning, finding people visibly dealing, taking drugs on their doorsteps, urinating in their gardens. In the last year, my residents actually made hundreds of reports to council and police, but were close to giving up, and in some cases selling up and moving out, because they were scared and felt no one was listening. But as local ward members, we listened to them, and we worked with them and our local immunity society on a petition for a police-led review signed by over 200 members of the immediate community. The police did call a review, and the licence was finally revoked. So there are levers we have as a local authority, but we need to see this administration proactively use them and talk and demonstrate much tougher action. We're seeing a dramatic increase in school children being robbed, sometimes at knife point, for their mobile phones. We keep hearing about the social cause and impacts of crime, but please let's not use the excuse of poverty or the cost of living crisis for a cowardly attack on a 12-year-old boy forced to open his backpack to unlock his phone before handing it over to muggers. These are not opportunistic or random acts, they're premeditated targeting of children on their way home from school. Or recently on the Finchley Road, 3 young males were threatening each other with machetes on an afternoon just as pupils were leaving the nearby schools. And this should worry each one of us as children from all our wards in Westminster attend these schools. What is most sickening is that the perpetrators are often children themselves. And all over the city, we've got gangs of shoplifters, often repeat offenders, operating in broad daylight. I'm sure we've all seen the footage of brazen raids on our flagship stores or small family-owned corner shops. So retail workers' safety and lives are put at risk by these so-called shoplifters or thieves, often armed with knives, as we heard from Councillor Rowley, as he witnessed on Marylebone High Street. So while our high street shops and hospitality operations are struggling to recruit staff, many stores are having to employ additional staff. And there might be big plans to regenerate Oxford Street, however ill-defined it might be by this administration. But who will want to work there, let alone shop? I'm sure this Labour administration is well-meaning on crime and ASB, but there seems to be a lot of tinkering around the edges with warm and fuzzy words for special interest groups rather than prioritising and ensuring the basics are delivered for all. And a non-negotiable is ensuring our communities feel safe. They don't. Antisocial behaviour and crime, one of the main measures our residents judge us by, is getting worse under a Labour council and a Labour mayor. So will this administration do the right thing for our city and call out the mayor to get more policing for our streets? Mr Khan has the money, he simply doesn't have the will. And I look forward to Councillor Les offering some specifics rather than more hollow words like we've heard from Councillor Haag and Mr Khan have specialised in.
I now call Councillor Leila Cunningham to speak, please. Oh, Tony, sorry. sorry. Sorry, I was just trying to avoid this. Sorry. Councillor Tony Devon. Sorry.
Very much. We'll move on to Councillor, my friend and colleague over there soon, because she will give a much better speech, obviously. But let me try and answer the question. And first of all, can I pay real tribute to the new Deputy Leader of the Council and her first speech in this chamber as Deputy Leader of our group. So the question is, why? Why is crime and antisocial behaviour getting worse, far worse, right across our city, north and south? Remind you, across London, we're up to 1 million crimes a year. it was 2/3 of a million when there's another mayor. Think about that for a moment. 1 million crimes, at least 1 million victims. And let me just read a couple of stats rather than lots of stats about Westminster. Robbery in 1 year is up 28.5%. Theft is up 30.5%. And knife crime is up 26.6%. And as well as the direct victims, my Lord Mayor, many of whom will never ever forget the life-changing nasty experiences they have suffered, we should never forget the friends and family who too are impacted by the crime and the fear of crime. Crime really matters. It affects us all. It matters more than just about anything we do in this chamber or what I do at the GLA. Politicians love sound bites. Can anyone forget Tony Blair saying those famous words, quote, tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime? Of course, the current Police and Crime Commissioner for London often parrots Blair's words. I understand his team actually understand that just before the new year, when our city reached the chilling milestone of 1,000 deaths for knife crime under his 7 years of mayor, when the 16-year-old boy was murdered on New Year's Eve, even Mr. Khan's team get this is serious and not party politics. Few criminals start as serious criminals. They often, as we all know, graduate from petty crime, often antisocial behaviour at a very young age, and then they unfortunately ended up as a gang leader capable of taking a human life. Having sat on the London Assembly for all Mr. Khan's term of office, what really gets me is his complacency and lack of leadership, a real lack of grip. And it saddens me as well as angers me. And just give you one specific example. Mr. Khan has completely lost control of crime on our public transport network. He's chairman of TfL as well as the Met Police overlord. Tube crime goes up and up. Let me give you an example of what could be done, because my predecessor as AM and the former deputy leader of this council, Kit Malthouse, instigated knife arches on the tube as deputy mayor. So I'll move on to the council because Mr. Khan, as colleagues opposite says, here do absolutely nothing. So I will move on from Mr. Khan because he is the do-nothing mayor. And I accept that Councillor Less is genuine about wanting to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. And I'm even going to use a couple of words that they use. CCTV is welcome, but yes, it is not a panacea. So this council can do, in my view, two things. Yes, one, they can press their own Labour mayor to actually fund our priorities. And please don't wail, there's no money. He's got £21 billion. He got another £500 million from the government only this week. So less spin doctors and more police is the message to the Labour councillors to give to the mayor. And finally to Aisha herself. Please listen to what our residents actually want. Visible Westminster on-street staff. The eyes and the ears of our police to crack down on the blatant drug dealing that Councillor Rowley and Councillor Short and many other councillors regularly report to this council and to the Met. And why is the Edgware Road like a Wild West after dark, quote, to quote residents, and yes, even a Labour ward councillor at a recent resident association meeting. Come on, Councillor Hark, less waffle. We have Sadiq Khan for that until the 2nd of May. More action.
Thank you, Councillor Devonish. Councillor Leila Cunningham this time, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Lord Mayor, I come before you today not with empty promises or virtue signalling, but with the plain truth, which is quite the change from what we usually hear from the other side. I'm here to talk about the state of our streets. And I'll keep it plain, Lord Mayor. When our corners are cluttered with rubbish and the walls are tagged with graffiti, it sends a message. It tells people that we've let things slide, that maybe we're not watching so closely. And in that message, crime thrives. We've seen it happen. an increase in crime and a 65% increase in fly tipping under a Labour administration, with reported incidents going up from around 18,000 to, I tell you, a staggering 30,000.
Shameful.
Yet voters were promised a fairer, cleaner, safer Westminster. Increased fly tipping, Lord Mayor, is not just an eyesore. It's a sign that we've lost pride in our community. And once that pride slips, people stop caring as much, and the criminals take note. Let's talk facts. Our streets, once the pride of London, are now hotspots for muggings and open drug dealing. Take a stroll down Queensway. It's like a who's who of petty criminals. The muggers seem to have taken the council. The muggers seem to have taken the council's recycling policy at heart, reusing residents' phones. And garden squares have become quite the marketplace, with drugs being peddled out in the open. And let's not forget, Lord Mayor, the vanishing act of our bicycles. It's as if there's a magic show on our streets. 1 minute your bike's there, and poof, the next it's gone. Are you going to let me speak, or do you want to stand up and speak for me? And let's not. And in the midst, And in the midst of this chaos, who suffers the most? It's our families. Mothers in our community, like me, are losing sleep, worrying each time their children step outside. The simple act of letting any child walk to the local shop has become a source of anxiety. This isn't the Westminster we know and love, and this isn't the Westminster we want for our future generations. Because, Lord Mayor, crime statistics are never just numbers. They represent real people and real fears. Every incident of fly tipping, every act of vandalism is another chip at our community's sense of safety. The Cabinet member in charge said, again this evening, that keeping the borough's streets safe and clean was the council's top priority. Well, that shows you they prioritise one thing and Westminster disastrously gets the opposite. People didn't vote for a rubbish tip, nor did they vote for a crime spree. It's about time we remind the other side, yes you, that actions speak louder than words. Because here's where the story changes. Lord Mayor, through relentless lobbying, tireless efforts, and a petition that echoed the voices of thousands in my ward, we, the Conservative Party, have managed to secure an extra police officer and have one of the most robust, safer neighbourhood teams this borough has. This isn't a stroke of luck. It's the result of a party that genuinely cares about tackling crime. We don't indulge in virtue signalling or prioritise meaningless mottos over hard work. Our focus is and always will be on the residents who elected us to do everything in our power to keep them safe. And that's a responsibility, Lord Mayor, that I take very seriously. For me, the bolstered Safer Neighbourhood team is just the beginning. It's a statement of intent, a promise that we're here to reclaim our streets, to restore order and pride in Westminster. We are sending, Lord Mayor, a message back to the criminals: your time is up. In closing, let's remember that fighting crime isn't just about policing. It's about our community. It's about refusing to let disorder take root. It's about standing together, shoulder to shoulder, to protect our borough, our home, and our families. And only the Conservatives have shown the resolve to make this happen. We don't just talk, Lord Mayor, we act. Because at the end of the day, it's not about politics, it's about people. It's about keeping Westminster safe for every mother, father, child and resident who is lucky to call this place home. Thank you.
Councillor Selina Short to speak, please. Thank you.
Antisocial behaviour is just exhausting. It wears good people down. The fact is that most people, with all their life problems, bills, health, etc., abide by the country's laws, which are there to make this a good society to live in. Many ASB issues in my ward are crimes, which should get reported to the police. People just don't. Fear of getting involved, fear that it's a waste of time and nothing will be done. The council can't regulate this, but as people have said already, you can lobby the mayor for more police resources. The council can also support residents and liaise with the police. It just takes too long for antisocial behaviour and local crime to be taken seriously. This year, St John's Gardens had been taken over by a small group of people who had no respect or concern for the hundreds of people who lived next door. They played loud music late into the night, they dealt drugs openly, they defecated. Suddenly, this precious green space was not somewhere for workers to have lunch or children to play after school, not a calm space for the local community, but somewhere that had been taken over by loud, aggressive, off-their-head louds. People in the surrounding flats were having their sleep disturbed night by night. When I first reported it, the rough sleeping team, we're a good council, went to offer help to bring them inside. A few joining the party were from a local hostel, and they got helped and their behaviour changed. But then nothing happened, even though David and I continued to follow it up, and there was CCTV evidence available. The marvellous peak lover and other officers did what they could. However, officers did not seem to have the tools to sort it out quickly. Finally, a multi-agency group was set up. I visited the park nearly every day. Our MP got the borough commander involved, but it took 5 months, which is just too long. Across the wards, lives are blighted by the lack of substantial action on these issues. Our ward is around 60% social houses, and I continually report residents' complaints about neighbours behaving badly. And I don't mean discussions between neighbours. I was surprised to hear that a lady in her 80s received a letter from the council ASB following a vibrant discussion with her neighbour about plants. She is about 5 foot tall, clinically blind, and it did feel like this was going for low-hanging fruit. I mean taking action when neighbours talk about drug dealing or other criminal behaviour. One case I helped with, the tenant causing problems was eventually found to be a sex worker using her flat as the office alongside blatant substance misuse. The disruption to those around her was just terrible. Yes, the perpetrator was vulnerable, extremely, as were her children. She did need to learn that this behaviour was not acceptable. I was also very sad to see a council tenant begging outside Sainsbury's. He was sad, harmless, vulnerable, and being taken advantage of by drug dealers. The police did deal with the flat in question, however, too late for him. The last time I saw him, he'd lost 2 toes and was totally out of it. This resident is a victim of the council's lack of backbone when dealing with people who are dealing in illegal substances on council property. CCTV cameras will hopefully help, but will only work if the footage is usable and there is a will to use it. Sometimes we get excuses why it can't be used, the wrong angle, the perpetrator was wearing a hat, a mask, etc. The CCTV on Victoria Street is not stopping the dealers who supply the street pop and rough sleepers. This extremely vulnerable group are peddled their daily hit openly. We also have a terrible shoplifting problem. I'm going to go to the end. None of this is easy to solve, but it cannot be acceptable that basically some people who are selfish, although they may be vulnerable as well, ruin the lives for so many others. The council does need to act faster, work with the police more, and not accept the police saying there's nothing they can do. These crimes do have victims, the local community, who just want to get on with their lives in a pleasant and peaceful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Aisha Less to reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to respond to this important debate this evening. And I'd like to give my thanks to all the speakers tonight. Councillor Sargent, I can't comment on specific cases, but I do share your concerns and we can follow up in due course. Councillor Devenish, Tony, as you called me, Aisha, we're listening, very clear, and you need to tell your government to give us some funding. Councillor Cunningham, the BCU looked again at the team as a whole and increased numbers of SNTs throughout the borough. So it wasn't just Lancaster Gate, because I had an extra one in Church Street as well. So actually it was due to the SNT meetings that we have And actually, in Lancaster Gate, you have the Queensway Task Force, which informed their decision to add an additional officer. Thank you very much.
I have the emails.
Councillor Short, thank you very much for your speech, and I would like to have details of those individuals that have those concerns, and I'm really concerned about those cases. But moving on swiftly, as I said earlier, crime and antisocial behaviour blights the lives of people who live and work in Westminster. As a council, we're committed to creating a fairer Westminster where everyone feels safe and welcome. And we can't do that without making tackling crime and ASB a key priority. However, we can't do this alone. Addressing crime and ASB requires a multi-agency response, and this is why we're committed to working closely with the police, housing providers, commission services and our communities to prevent, reduce and enforce against crime. Our Safer Westminster Partnership Strategy, which the Council will approve tonight, sets out our plan to do this with 3 key priorities: tackling serious violence and exploitation, creating safer, more confident neighbourhoods and making the West End a safer place for our residents, businesses and visitors. Prevention and collaboration working are at the heart of what we do to tackle violent crime. A crucial partner in this work is the GLA, who have supported us with funding to expand our integrated gangs unit. The unit reaches out to young people at risk of gang behaviour, offers early intervention and wraparound support to young people and their families. A review of the IGXU from the end of last year found that 47% of a recent cohort of young people have shown signs of improvement in either their offending or impacting scores. Those who work with the IGXU for a longer time period, 67% showed improvements, which is really encouraging and demonstrates the benefit of that partnership funding. We've also had a restructure of our PPL service last year, which allows us to target challenges affecting communities the most and complements the work of the police. Bringing the separate noise specialist team in-house mean that residents will now be able to speak to the same officer who will follow up their case. We have increased the number of permanent city inspectors working across the borough to 80, up from 76 in 2018 under the previous administration. And there are now 5 teams of 24/7 officers who are specifically trained to deal with emergencies. Finally, we're working to make the West End a safer place for our residents, businesses and visitors. We recognise that crime and ASB doesn't only affect our residents, but a small percentage of the 640,000 people that visit the West End every day. I know it is no surprise to anyone in this chamber tonight that almost half of violent crime in the borough takes place in the West End and St James, predominantly in the nighttime economy. Fundamentally, the policing of Soho and the West End is the responsibility of the Metropolitan Police, with considerable policing presence and dedicated policing units that focus on the West End. Council officers work closely with the Met Police to support them to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour in Soho, and our licensing teams also work with the police to ensure premises are being operated responsibly and promoting the licensing objectives. We've also recently published an updated SIA which identifies the impacts of licensed venues across Westminster. For the first time, the CIA includes evidence of how alcohol-related ASB affects residents. The CIA can now be used by applicants, residents and subcommittees to understand alcohol-related ASB and make sure the applications we get in Westminster are of the highest quality. And we're currently engaging on Westminster After Dark, an action plan to improve the night time in Westminster. A key component of this is being how we keep people safe in the city at night. We acknowledge that there is more to do to tackle crime and ASB in Westminster, but as you can see, it is absolutely a key council priority, and by continuing with our multi-agency approach outlined in the Safer Westminster Partnership, we will continue to make our city a safe and welcoming place for all our residents, workers and visitors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Les. Agenda item 13, notice of motion. The motion this evening has been submitted by the majority party and is entitled Cooperative Councils Innovation Network. There will be 3 speakers on this motion and I will then call the vote. As mentioned previously, the names of those down to speak are tabled on the order paper. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. I now call Councillor Ellie Ormsby to move the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to showcase our new membership of the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network and propose this motion. As a Labour and Cooperative Councillor and a member of the Cooperative Party's National Executive Committee, cooperative values are at the heart of my politics. And that's because it's become clear to me, after 14 years of decline, chaos and mismanagement, and given the unprecedented challenges now facing the public sector and local government.
Sorry,
what are you doing? What are you doing, Paul?
The national executive of a body that they're pushing a motion through is surely a conflict of interest.
What's your point?
Hold on.
You weren't aware of this earlier on, you grandstanding.
Point of clarification, this is a body not associated necessarily with the Cooperative Party. It's affiliated.
You read it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, sure.
It's not a
Could have
body
Googled
owned
it,
by the
that might
party
help.
I represent.
Yeah. I wish you'd read
Although
it.
they have the same values, of course.
A taste of things to come for the opposition under Councillor Swaddle.
There is no conflict.
There's absolutely no conflict.
It's an LGA network. It has the same word.
It's a special interest group and it's a non-party political organisation, if you'd let me get to that. But I'll wait.
Time stand still.
Just taking advice, Councillor Swaddle, it's not a conflict of interest.
First of many mistakes.
Where was I? So, given the unprecedented challenges now facing the public sector and local government, traditional models of top-down governance and economic growth are no longer fit for purpose. We urgently need to create a new approach. The founding traditions of the cooperative movement, collective action and cooperation, empowerment and enterprise offer a foundation for fresh and innovative solutions in responses to these challenges. For the uninitiated, as Councillor Swaddle is, the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network is an LGA special interest group, and it's open, in fact, to all UK councils. It's non-party political and has members from across the political spectrum. Yeah, exactly. The network's stated aim is to drive innovation and reform within the framework of cooperative values and principles, bringing an equal partnership with local people. And those very same values drive us. A commitment to finding better ways of working for, and most importantly, with, local people for the benefit of the local community. Since taking over the council, we've sought to transform Westminster into a council that delivers both effective services and has a commitment to social justice and putting residents front and centre. The council has already been doing so much in the 3 areas identified by the network as ways to be proactive and in developing an inclusive economy. That are fair tax, modern slavery and the London living wage. For example, last summer we signed the Fair Tax Declaration to show our alignment to their values and to encourage responsible tax practice in our supply chain. And while we've recently signed the Cooperative Party's Modern Slavery Charter, I'm very pleased to say that all 10 commitments had already been committed to in our own Modern Slavery Statement, which was published in 2022. But on the London living wage, we know that's a particularly prevalent and impactful issue in Westminster with the nature of our economy. There is a huge wage disparity between those working in services compared to sectors such as hospitality, where low wages is the model for a number of operators. Despite an average income of over £40,000 for Westminster residents, we also have the highest number of low-paid workers in London. The Trust for London found that 8% of the total workforce in London paid below the London living wage live in Westminster, a disproportionate number. It's great that we have businesses who want to invest in Westminster and see the value this area has to offer, but too often that has overlooked the value of the people here and the opportunity to invest in them, with proper wages and secure employment. We ourselves at the Council have made progress on pay where we have direct control, for example in social care, thanks to Councillor Butler Colossus. And now we need to come together and encourage others to follow our lead. And we have been setting the example. And since 2022, the Council has only advertised London living wage opportunities and worked with employers committed to good pay and progression, because we know residents are struggling to make good work pay and employers want to retain staff. But I'll finish by musing. I'm curious as to what the minority party will seek to critique in this motion. Perhaps they don't want to support the active engagement of residents in decision making, or they don't want us to embrace innovation in how we work. Or maybe they don't see the value in learning from other councils from across the country. Well, this administration certainly does. So I'm proud to propose this motion.
I now call Councillor Jason Williams to second the motion.
I'm not sure if I can have two maiden speeches, but if you can, I'd like to make my second maiden speech to second this motion. As a committee cooperator and vice chair of the London Regional Cooperative Party, I'm also delighted that we're joining the network which I will co-chair with Councillor Ormsby. The Cooperative Council's Innovation Network is a great opportunity for us to work on a cross-party basis with other local authorities across the country to develop new approaches which work for our residents. Through the network, we can reclaim the traditions of community action, community engagement, and civic empowerment that can transform communities. The network offers us toolkits and approaches to increase democratic engagement and co-productions, to develop systems with residents and wider communities, to enable citizens to be equal partners in designing solutions to our city. It provides our leaders and officers with an extensive network of support from across the country to develop approaches and learn from others. With innovations and initiatives such as the Tailored Digital Skills and Inclusive Help Scheme, which helps to bridge the digital divide, we can help communities be empowered to take charge and take sure how the network is helping local councils innovate for their residents. Lord Mayor, this network will enrich and empower our city. I'm very happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor William. I now call Councillor Paul Swaddle to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I find that here we are in a university, and this is like some student union motion. The party opposite thought that this motion was so important to them that they allocated no time to it. They are not being spoken to as a majority party time. This is in our time to raise questions about this. It's utterly disrespectful. I believe possibly the only time ever that a party has moved a motion and then not wished to debate it. Seems very odd to me. The party opposite said have instructed already this council to join this cross-party network. This cross-party network has one member that isn't a Labour council, and they're the Greens. It doesn't sound very cross-party to me. Oh, sorry. Sorry, two. Sorry, it's 24 Labour members. If this administration are so worried about their cabinet that they have to instruct them through motions at this council meeting to do nothing, because this motion doesn't make us members, because we were already members, because they'd already put through a motion on it. So why on earth are we bringing and wasting time here, hearing about doing nothing different? You can already implement these things. You're the cabinet. Are your backbenchers that worried that you're not going to follow through? I think it is shocking that we're even having to raise these questions in our time rather than a debate led by the majority party. On that basis, and the basis that our residents want to hear more about crime, we were voting against this motion.
We are mortally wounded for it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Very more time to talk about crime.
So as no amendment has been submitted, we will now vote on the motion as laid out in the agenda by a show of hands. Those in favour?
And the SNP.
Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. We will now move on to vote on the recommendation of the report listed under agenda item 11 and entitled Safer Westminster Partnership Strategy 2024 to 2027. The recommendation is deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendation agreed. We will now move on to vote on the recommendations of the report listed under agenda item 12 and entitled Report to Full Council, Council Tax Discounts, including Council Tax Local Reduction Scheme and Council Tax Base Report. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendations are agreed. That concludes the council meeting. Thank you and good night.